Okay. I am a big believer in if you have a head coach and a quarterback in the NFL, you are a contender. You can win a bunch of games. And I think history tells us that. Andy Reid, great head coach, the best offensive mind we've seen in NFL history, in my opinion. Compared with Pat Mahomes, maybe the best quarterback talent we've ever seen in NFL history. Tom Brady has more Super Bowls than everybody else, has more Super Bowls than organizations have Super Bowls. All but one of his came with Bill Belichick. You look across the NFL, the teams that are very, very good have good head coach, quarterback duos. I feel like if you have that battery in your organization, you can be a really good football team that racks up a bunch of wins. I think the Texans have a really good head coach, one of the better ones in the NFL, even after just a year. I think he's a top 5 head coach in the NFL right now. I think they have one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL. I have him as high as number 5 on the Branham quarterback rankings. So yes, I think highly of DeMeco Ryans and CJ Stroud as the head coach, quarterback core that can lead organizations. CBS Sports has them 10. They ranked quarterback and head coaching cores pairings and stacked them up relative to the rest of the NFL. DeMeco and CJ Stroud come in at 10. 10. This is absurd. It's disrespectful. They don't know ball.
No, to me, when you start looking at the list, the biggest thing is one or the other. It's the coach or the quarterback where there's a couple of cases where you can poke holes and you can really question if that guy deserves to be on the list. If that's the case, then as a tandem, I think it loses value. You don't lose value with DeMeco, as you mentioned. The value seems to be sky high and going higher for C.J. Stroud. When you look at like a Dak Prescott, sure, you could say what Dak does in the regular season. Mike McCarthy, as a coach and a play caller and a guy that you're going to put in the top half of the league as a head coach or the top 10, I don't see it. I don't believe it. I don't think it, and therefore I wouldn't do it. So some of these tandems on this list, it's one or the other where I go, I can't. And the fact that the Texans are behind some of these guys really is disturbing.
Let's see how high we're willing to go, because 10 is disrespectful. It's a slap in Houston's face, quite frankly. Stroud, DeMeco at 10. They have at number 9, Dak Prescott and Mike McCarthy, the example that you mentioned. I think Stroud's already better than Dak, and I think Dak's good. I like Dak. I'm not a Dak hater like some are, but I would take Stroud over Dak, and of course I'm taking DeMeco over McCarthy.
No question.
Yes, I would have Houston ahead of Dallas.
Right. No doubt. We would, like I said, I already talked about this one, and from personal experience, and then watching McCarthy, no matter what he thinks he's been able to do with Dallas, now they're lesser than in the running game, and even with their receivers. I don't believe in Mike McCarthy as the leader and a solid head coach. So I would definitely put the Texans duo above them.
They have Detroit 8, and I like Detroit's duo. I think Jared Goff is underrated. Jared Goff has been to a Super Bowl. Dan Campbell biting kneecaps. I think that one of the attributes that we overlook and underrate when it comes to coaching is leadership. And I think Dan Campbell has that in spades. I think it's his best attribute. Are you taking Jared Goff and Dan Campbell over DeMeco Ryans and CJ Stroud?
I think for now, as much as I'm not a big fan of Jared Goff, I still can't crap on what he's done recently, and especially since he's been in Detroit. Dan Campbell, definitely a leader of men, definitely gets the most out of his locker room, and they had a hell of a run last year. They look like they're going to be a good team again this year. I don't think it's going to be long before I can put CJ and DeMeco over them, but for the time being, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say they can be above the Texans.
Ain't no way I'm putting Jared Goff ahead of CJ Stroud, and ain't no way I'm putting Dan Campbell ahead of DeMeco Ryans. I'm taking both quarterback, both head coach when it comes to Detroit-Houston, so I'm jumping them over Detroit. Next up, they have Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni, the jabroni, Nick Sirianni.
Well, and you mentioned it. Right there in a nutshell is the reason why these guys, as a team, they're loaded. They have a ton of talent. As a team, it's a very, very good roster. As a head coach, I don't believe in him either, and I don't really skip all the sideline antics. When he lost his OC and his DC, the team took a big step backwards. I don't believe in Nick Sirianni as the head coach. Jalen Hurts has surpassed what I thought he was going to be in this league. I think he has a lot of ability, but for the reason of Nick Sirianni alone, I put the Texans duo above him.
Yeah, me too. Like if you're looking at those four as weapons in an organization, Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni, C.J. Stroud, DeMeco Ryans, it's like an SAT question. Which of the four does not belong?
Yeah,
Nick
right.
Sirianni. Nick
Easily.
Sirianni doesn't belong. So, yes, I'm jumping Houston over Philadelphia when talking about head coach quarterback duos. Okay, Cincinnati, Joe Burrow and Zach Taylor.
See, again, for me, this is a lot like the Detroit situation, only they've gone further. I think Zach Taylor to me, has proven where I was questioning what he was going to be and how he was going to be in Cincinnati. He's done a lot of things. Joe Burrow has proven the one thing that he can do that not any other quarterback in the AFC seems to be able to do, and that's beat Patrick Mahomes. Burrow's coming off an injury, yes, but for the time being, I got to respect the fact that they've been there and done that and gone a little further. So I will, at this point in time, still put Burrow and Zach Taylor a small distance above the Texans duo.
Houston Texans have been there, done that in Cincinnati, and beat the brains out of Joe Burrow and Zach Taylor by 3 points.
Burrow was a little dinged up, but
no, he was fine. He was fine then.
No, he was coming off where he wasn't around the team and had been around the team as much because he was dealing with the calf injury last season before he suffered the other injury. And Chase did play. I believe he was questionable. He played in that game. But, yeah, you can make that argument. I just think because of the fact that from a longevity standpoint, what they've done in the playoffs and the fact that they've beaten Mahomes, I give them a slight advantage.
Burrow didn't miss a game until week 12, their 11th game. He got hurt in the Baltimore game. He was pretty dang good.
Okay.
He's pretty dang good. Weeks before they played Buffalo the week before. He beat Buffalo for 348 yards and 2 touchdowns, 31 for 44. He was coming off a 31 for 44 game, 348 yards, 2 touchdowns in a win against Buffalo. And then C.J. Stroud and DeMeco Ryans went into Cincinnati and got a win.
Okay.
So, I mean, he was in good form. I think that you're underselling how good he was playing.
I also think that beating Mahomes means something in the playoffs, and so
That's fair.
I'm going to give them the credit.
No, I'm good with that. It's just like they got a less than Burrow. That's not accurate. 348 yards the week before. The week before that, 3 touchdowns, 283 yards, and a win at San Francisco. He win at San Francisco, 283 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Win against Buffalo, 348 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then the DeMeco Ryan, C.J. Stroud-led Texans came to town and beat Joe Burrow. And then he got hurt the next week at Baltimore. But I think he was playing his best football whenever Houston came in there. Now, I'm with you that I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, too, because they've been to a Super Bowl. So I'll still give the edge to Burrow and Taylor, despite DeMeco and Stroud having scoreboard in Cincinnati. But, yes, the Bengals do get the trump card here because they've been to that Super Bowl. Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay.
See, at this point, in their careers, I believe in CJ more than I believe in Matthew Stafford, even though Matthew Stafford's had a hell of a career. I think Sean McVay is fantastic, but, we keep hearing about how long he's going to be in this for.
Why does that matter, though?
No, I'm just trying to think about, from a longevity standpoint, but I believe that he's a hell of a coach. I believe he's one of the better coaches in this league. But so I think DeMeco's on the rise. He's an up-and-coming great head coach. I think McVay's already a great head coach. It comes down to me to either CJ or to Matt Stafford. I believe at this point in their careers, I'll take CJ over Matt Stafford. So for that reason, I think that I would put the Texans slightly ahead of the Rams.
Yeah, I'm putting them ahead of the Rams, too. Stafford's old, washed, and DeMeco is what Sean McVay is on the other side of the ball. So I'm willing to jump him over the Rams, mostly because Stafford's a little bit older, although Stafford was good when he had his full complement of receivers last year. Josh Allen, Sean McDermott.
Well, I just think Josh Allen is so freaking good, and his ability is just unbelievable. That I just believe that he's the number one card in this comparison between these 4 guys. So I believe that from that standpoint and the standpoint that they've also been there for quite a while. Look, I kid about that because I know your love for Josh Allen.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a pretty good question, but I think that they have a lot to prove this year, and I think that again you're seeing guys that have had their run. But I just don't know how much is left. I know that, with McDermott, we were talking about, some of the things with the team last year and some of the things that came out too that you're like, you probably shouldn't have said that. But overall, I think that it's Josh Allen.
Why does that matter?
I think from a coaching perspective, I think it matters. I think that the way you handle your team and the things that you say sometimes, you should be questioned.
It was like 10 years ago.
No, it wasn't 10 years ago.
Wasn't it like old? I didn't think it was last year. It came out last year.
It was like 2 or 3 years ago at latest. But look, I think this is a tough call for them. I think that, I think the Texans have to kind of get on that kind of run to surpass them. So for the time being, I'm still going to put Buffalo a little bit above the Texans.
Okay. I think Josh Allen's extremely overrated. Give me Stroud. And Sean McDermott's not in the same lead as DeMeco Ryans. So Texans over Bills when I'm looking at that duo. Brock Purdy, Kyle Shanahan.
To me, this comes down to Purdy or CJ, and I think CJ basically is head and shoulders ability-wise over Brock Purdy, so I will take the Texans.
I go Niners here. No, I don't. I go Texans here because of the same thing you said. Yeah, Shanahan's been to a Super Bowl, hasn't won a Super Bowl. Brock Purdy is not in the same stratosphere as C.J. Stroud. So I'll take Texans over the Niners core two. And then the next two I don't. Lamar Jackson, John Harbaugh, like they literally beat you last year in the playoffs handedly. So, yes, they have scoreboard on you, and they did it in the postseason. So I can't give the Texans core better than the Baltimore core. And then number one's Mahomes and Reed. And
Yeah,
that's
they're
disrespectful.
not, yeah.
So I have the Texans fourth. I had the Texans head coach quarterback duo fourth. I think you had them seventh,
six or seven.
6 or 7. I have them 4. I have them as a top 5 core head coach quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah,
10's disrespectful.
I would keep them at 6. I could definitely see them in the top 6. And again, I think that they are ascending. I think that they're going to continue to get better and better. We see some of the teams even in the top 6 that I think are going to continue to work their way down towards the bottom of the 10. So I think that this is a great kind of just starter set for this team that the sky's the limit for.
Yeah, so 4, 6. Brian, what about you? Head coach quarterback duo. We all agree that 10 is ridiculous.
Yeah, I would have them in the top 5. I didn't follow it closely enough to give you the exact location, but
Great job, Brian.
I would spitball and say I'd have about 5.
Okay, you're spitball at 5. Spitballing 5. 713-780-ESPN. 9666. Can we stop rewarding Burrow for beating Mahomes 3 seasons ago? Also, Hurts and Nick also went to a Super Bowl. It's a good argument there. 9666. It's pretty good. Pretty good argument.
Sirianni had some pretty good coordinators.
He did. I do think he's got a good coordinator again. I actually kind of like the Eagles this year. I think I've talked myself into liking the Eagles because I think Nick Sirianni kind of realized who he's been.
Get the hell out of the way.
I think so. I'm actually kind of in on the Eagles this season. We'll start to give our predictions a little bit next week. Although a little bit later on, I have my 5 best bets when it comes to these team totals. I didn't tease anything there though. I didn't give anything away. 9229, you're missing it, Branham. You're crowning the Texans after one partially successful season. They have to show up again this year and establish themselves before they deserve to be ahead of the teams coaches you mentioned. I view sports a little differently. I don't look at resumes. I don't look at the whole accolades things. I talk about the now. I talk about the current. The whole resume attitude, like, oh, they haven't done it for years. Well, then Pat Mahomes would have never won a Super Bowl. Pat Mahomes wouldn't have won a Super Bowl because he didn't do it before. No, give me the now. I live where my feet are. I don't care what a dude did 5 years ago. I care about this moment and who I trust the most in this moment. And I trust DeMeco and Stroud more than every head coach quarterback duo in the NFL, sans 4.
Yeah, and that's fair. Look, I think that, again, you're fair in saying that they have to prove it again, but every team does. And the fact that they were able to turn it around and in year 1 of C.J. Stroud and of DeMeco Ryans do the things that they were able to do in their first season together and their first seasons in their current positions, that just says so much about the fact that how big and bright the future is going to be for this duo, regardless of what they do this season or not.
713-780-ESPN, 9589. Josh Allen is a poverty quarterback when it's said and done. Hot Take Boulevard. Cash it. I agree with you. 6589. I think he's overrated, just like 103 NFL players do.
Yep, trash it. I think that he still deserves the respect of a guy that's in the top 5 in quarterbacks in this league.
Would you say he's overrated if people think he's third?
I mean, he's in the conversation. Look, we talk about everybody that's got things to prove. We've already said that now he's really got even more to prove. All eyes are watching, and definitely the microscopes are on, that the turnovers have to go down. And with lesser than at receivers than he's had in the past, he's going to have to try and do more.
6761, you wouldn't know what to do. You wouldn't know what or who to trust in the moment unless history didn't exist. What you said makes 0 sense. So how would you crown a guy who had the best rookie season ever? Like, you basing that based on what he did at Ohio State? Or is it like eye test? I think this guy's going to be really good. Or like the Mahomes example that I used. Mahomes sat behind Alex Smith for an entire season after people thought the Kansas City Chiefs trade-up was not smart, and they reached on selecting Pat Mahomes, and they went to a conference championship in that year. How are you predicting they're going to a conference championship based on history? And then the whole, well, you got to keep doing it or otherwise, you're not any good. Well, he won the Super Bowl in his second year. So what are you talking about? Like, it's about talent. His third year, his second year as a starter. So it's all about talent. It's about your eyes. Like the whole, this is their resume and this is why they're going to be good. You'd be a terrible general manager because you have to rely on your eyes and you have to rely on what somebody's going to do for the next 3 years, not what they did for the previous 3.
Well, and the other thing you had to factor in is every season is different with the injuries, too. Things are going to happen where you're going to endure some things that maybe you weren't expecting, and sometimes they're impact players that are going to change the course of everything. Sometimes it's playing a first-place tougher schedule than you did the year before. That doesn't mean that they're going to be lesser than. It doesn't mean that they're not going to still have the same trajectory for the big picture.
Tyler and Conroe, top 5 quarterbacks right now: Mahomes, Burrow, Jackson, Stroud, Goff. I might flip-flop Burrow and Jackson. I like Jackson a little bit more than Burrow, but Burrow's really stinking good. I'd probably have Burrow 3. Goff being in the 5 holes, not there for me.
I don't like Goff there. I'll put Allen there.
Yeah, I think I had Allen 5th, but he's more of a regular season fantasy football quarterback. If Josh Allen is overrated, then I would love to see who an opponent game plans to stop when they play the Bills. Just any team they played in the playoffs. All right, 713-780-3776, HRP listener line. What is the work share? It looks like the Texans 53 is about done. Like they didn't even put in a waiver claim, like at all. It's not that they were beat out by other teams. They didn't put in a waiver claim. So it seems like their 53-man is set. Now that we know what it is, what does this work share look like in the running back room? What about the wide receiver room? 713-780-3776. It's the Bees on ESPN 97.5 and ESPN 92.5.